Coming up on this Thursday edition of Daybreak, in the second of a series of special reports, we take a look at the economic successes and challenges facing the Park administration as the president enters her third year in office. A government advisory panel in Japan starts discussing what Prime Minister Shinzo Abe should say on the 70th anniversary of the end of World War II. Abe will issue a statement in mid-August. Plus, 3 men from New York are arrested on charges of attempting to provide material support to Islamic State militants. Daybreak begins now. Hello and thanks for joining us. To our viewers around the world, it's 6 a.m. on Thursday, February 26th here in Seoul. I'm Mark Broome and you're tuned in to Daybreak. We begin at the nation's top office where President Park Geun-hye kicked off her third year at the Blue House on Wednesday. To mark the occasion, she met with her entire staff at the presidential office of Cheongwadae for the first time since her inauguration and called for efforts to reform the country's economy. Let's take a listen to what she had to say.
우리에게는 새로운 각오로 경제 혁신을 이루어내고 통일 기반을 마련해야 되는 막중한 과제가 부여되어 있습니다. 개인적인 영달을 떠나서 사명감과 충정심을 가지고 이런 일은 반드시 이루어내야 합니다.
Now, as a follow-up to that, and in the second part of our three-part series looking at what's ahead for President Park's third year in office, we're going to focus on the economy. The government has been trying to breathe new life into the economy, but many say structural reforms need to be undertaken for those efforts to bear fruit. For more on the administration's economic successes and the challenges that lay ahead, here's our Hwang Jae.
In her first 2 years in office, President Park Geun-hye put much emphasis on revitalizing the flagging domestic economy. As a result, Korea managed to keep up with the growth pace of the world economy while the employment rate reached 65% for the first time last year. The government's strong drive to boost the housing market also led to the number of home transactions to top 1 million in 2014, the largest in 8 years. Despite the improving economic figures, many are not feeling the difference. A recent survey shows that more than 9 out of 10 Koreans say the domestic economy has fallen into a state of depression. It's not surprising, says Shin Min-young from LG Economic Research Institute.
The structural problems that the economy is facing, like growing household debt and sluggish corporate investment, make it harder for ordinary people to feel the benefits of government stimulus measures that have a temporary impact on the economy.
The government has pledged to carry out structural reforms this year, focusing on the labor, education, financial, and public sectors. It's a welcomed move, but experts say some sectors need more attention.
The most important thing to achieve long-term growth is reforming the public sector. To be specific, reforms in the public servants' pension program should take place early this year so that it won't hurt the country's fiscal health.
They add that it's also critical to resolve the divide between regular and non-regular workers in order to increase flexibility in the labor market. And to push through such structural reforms this year, experts say that the government should ensure the related parties have a full understanding of their importance. Hwang Jae, Arirang News.
Now, President Park's anniversary of her inauguration also coincided with this month's Culture Day, and she took the opportunity to emphasize her creative economy initiative at a cultural creativity center that recently opened in Seoul. The president talked about developing creative contents that can appeal to foreign tourists. to help spur the domestic tourism industry. President Park also asked artistic producers and investors to make use of Korea's traditional and historical stories to better attract global audiences. She also stressed the need to better promote cultural contents to local audiences as well, to boost spending and investment. Months after tentatively agreeing to the terms of their FTA, South Korea and China on Wednesday signed the provisional agreements of the Free Trade Pact. What jumps out in this deal is the number of Korean goods subject to so-called preferential tariffs. Our Song Ji-sun reports.
Korea's Trade Ministry said Wednesday Seoul and Beijing exchanged provisional agreements 3 months after concluding negotiations on a bilateral free trade deal in November last year. Tariffs will be lifted on over 90% of all imported goods from both sides within 20 years of the FTA taking effect. The free trade deal with China will see the largest number of Korean goods enjoying preferential tariffs, as it will also include more than 300 items manufactured at the Inter-Korean Industrial Complex in Kaesong. Manufacturers in the Kaesong complex will get a boost by taking advantage of the lower labor costs in North Korea, while the South Korean origin tags will strengthen their chances of entering the Chinese market. The two sides also focused on protecting their weak sides. Over 500 major agriculture products, including rice, which is one of the most sensitive items for Korean farmers, were excluded from the deal. The two sides also excluded passenger vehicles and auto parts to support the domestic manufacturing sectors. Korea's exports to China, its biggest trading partner, currently accounts for a quarter of its total outbound shipments. Seoul and Beijing hope to finalize the formal signing within the first half of the year and have it ratified by both parliaments before the year ends. Further details on the agreement can be found on Seoul's FTA website. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
We start before the sun rises to bring you the latest stories out of Korea. We also lead the way with important global coverage. Stay on the pulse of what is happening with Daybreak.
Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has begun preparations for a key statement he will release this summer to mark the 70th anniversary of Japan's surrender in World War II. In his first advisory panel meeting with experts on Wednesday, Abe requested views be gathered on issues regarding Japan's post-war contribution to the global community and lessons to be learned from its history. Attention is on whether Abe's statement will uphold Japan's remorse for its wartime atrocities in line with the general position of his predecessors. In an interview with Japan's public broadcaster NHK on Wednesday, former Prime Minister Tomiichi Murayama said that, quote, key words should not be changed or removed. Other Japanese politicians are also demanding previous statements be inherited as a whole, saying repentance for Japan's historical wrongdoings is a key point of the statements. Now, Korea's National Assembly on Wednesday kicked off a 3-day questioning session on government affairs. Fielding his first round of parliamentary questioning as Prime Minister, Iwongu was on hand to make his Assembly debut. Park Ji-won reports.
Prime Minister Iwongu, who was confirmed to take the nation's second highest position just last week, made his debut at a parliamentary government questioning session on this Wednesday.
Putting the utmost priority on reviving the economy, I will focus on government reforms on diverse sectors. I will respect and cooperate with the Assembly, which represents the will of the people.
During the session covering political, diplomatic and security issues, Lee took a prudent approach to addressing sensitive topics, especially questions related to North Korean policies, while also reaffirming the Park administration's stance. Experts say the 65-year-old former politician, still reeling from his tough confirmation hearing, will probably continue with this low-key approach as he tries to communicate the president's goals.
As a former floor leader of the ruling camp, he's likely to show more respect to parties at the Assembly, which could benefit President Park Geun-hye's image and give her more leeway in state affairs. Former Prime Minister Chung Hon-won failed to play the role of messenger and communicator for the administration.
7 government ministers, including those dealing with foreign unification, justice, and defense affairs, were also present at the session, taking questions posed by a dozen lawmakers from the ruling and main opposition parties. They touched on a range of issues, from a constitutional revision and potential missile defense plans to proposals to reform the pension system. Sessions scheduled for Thursday and Friday will focus on economic, social, and cultural affairs. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
Now, as a follow-up to Ji-won's report there on the Prime Minister's questioning, Iwongu also called on activist groups to refrain from conspicuous displays when sending anti-Pyongyang leaflets across the border. While supporting the group's right to freedom of expression, Yi said it was not proper to make open displays as if to show off when sending balloons over the border that are filled with things like leaflets, USB drives and dollar bills. Residents of towns near the border worry the campaigns put them in danger, as North Korea has threatened to shoot at the balloons. He says the government will take the issue seriously. Now, if and when North Korea conducts a 4th nuclear test, it's going to be way more powerful than the ones that came before it. Citing an unnamed South Korean government source, a number of local media outlets are reporting that the regime is conducting high explosive detonation tests to develop the technology to miniaturize nuclear warheads and strengthen the blast yield. The source predicted a 4th nuclear test would have a yield of around 10 to 15 kilotons. Now, that's triple the force of North Korea's first test and double that of the last 2 tests. The source says no signs of a nuclear test have been detected around North Korea's usual test site, but warned the regime could conduct a test at any time. South Korea's top nuclear negotiator says the rest of the members of the 6-party talks, excluding North Korea, have agreed to hold a round of preliminary talks to get back to denuclearization discussions. But will Pyongyang be interested in joining? Hwang Sang-yi has the details.
South Korea, the United States, China, Japan and Russia have agreed on the need to hold exploratory talks prior to restarting the long-stalled 6-party nuclear dialogue. Wrapping up a meeting with his Russian counterpart Igor Morgulov in Moscow on Tuesday, South Korea's chief nuclear envoy Hwang Jung-guk said the 5 parties reached such consensus through a series of meetings over the past few weeks. The South Korean envoy said officials discussed when and where the exploratory talks should take place, and added that 6-way dialogue involving North Korea is also being taken into account. The prelude meeting will allow the 6 nations to meet with no strings attached and to test North Korea's sincerity about denuclearization before formally resuming the 6-party talks, which haven't been held since late 2008. Seoul and Washington have stressed that Pyongyang first take the necessary steps to end its nuclear program, while China, Russia, and North Korea want to reopen the talks without preconditions. But whether Pyongyang will accept the invitation remains in doubt. The regime has been raising military tensions on the Korean peninsula in protest of the joint military drills between Seoul and Washington that kick off next week. Hwang Sang-yi, Arirang News.
South Korea may be removed from the European Union's list of illegal fishing nations. Wrapping up bilateral talks in Seoul on Wednesday, Korea's Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries said the EU was impressed by efforts made by Seoul to curb unauthorized fishing and showed a positive response to Korea being taken off its list. Korea has taken a series of measures, including a revision to the law on deep sea fishing that imposes a heftier fine for illegal fishing, as well as requiring that all deep-sea fishing boats be equipped with GPS tracking devices. Brussels designated Korea as a preliminary illegal fishing nation in 2013, saying it risked facing trade sanctions unless it cooperated in the fight against illegal fishing. The EU is expected to announce its final list in about 2 months' time. Korea is planning to send officials to countries bordering Syria in a bid to prevent Korean nationals entering the country, which has become the major base of activity for the extremist group that calls itself Islamic State. The move is in response to news that a Korean teenager recently joined the group after crossing into Syria from Turkey. Connie Kim reports.
Korea is beefing up efforts to prevent another citizen from illegally crossing into Syria, the base for the Islamic State militant group. Seoul's foreign ministry said Wednesday that a plan is in the works to possibly send officials to countries bordering Syria in order to check on the safety of Korean residents and companies in the Middle East. They may also seek cooperation on border security. The alarming move comes amid growing security concerns in the region as extremist groups have become more violent in recent months. It also comes on the heels of new intelligence that confirmed a Korean teenager who went missing in Turkey last month is in fact receiving training from IS. He reportedly entered via a Syria-Turkey border town. And to prevent such illegal crossings, Seoul has requested countries on its travel ban list to strengthen their border controls. As of now, Syria, Iraq, Libya, Somalia, Afghanistan, and Yemen are on Korea's travel ban list. But the government's efforts don't stop there. Korea's travel agencies have also been advised not to sell tour packages to countries near Syria to keep citizens from being targeted by terrorist groups. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Time now for a look through the global headlines we're following this Thursday morning from Seoul. For that, we connect to Eunice Kim, standing by at the news center. Good morning, Eunice.
Hello, Mark. New this morning, police in New York have arrested 3 men from Brooklyn and charged them with conspiring to support the Islamic State group. 2 allegedly had plans to go to the extremist group in Syria. Now, authorities say they arrested one of the men, a 19-year-old from Kazakhstan, before he was to board a flight to Turkey from John F. Kennedy Airport early Wednesday local time. Federal agents flagged the group when they found posts made by a 24-year-old suspect on an Uzbek language website expressing his desire to join the IS group and his willingness to assassinate the U.S. leader. A criminal complaint showed that the suspect repeated the sentiments when agents interviewed him at his home in August of last year. The third suspect is accused of helping fund his peers' efforts. Mysterious drone sightings were reported for a second straight night in Paris as authorities there tried to identify the operators of the unmanned aerial vehicles. AFP reports at least 5 sightings were reported between late Tuesday night and early Wednesday morning local time at French landmarks including the Eiffel Tower and the Place de la Concorde. Citing law enforcement officials, CNN reports the U.S. Secret Service is in touch with their counterparts after a UAV flew over the U.S. Embassy in Paris earlier. Police did arrest 3 Al Jazeera journalists after they were found flying a drone over a Paris park. Though prosecutors are not tying it to the landmark sightings, flying a UAV without a license is banned by law in France. Al Jazeera tweeted its journalists were working on a report on the mystery drones. Over to Ukraine now. Government forces there say they are seeing a noticeable lull in the fighting as a ceasefire struggles to hold on. It said it recorded no casualties in 24 hours, a first in weeks, as pro-Russian separatists claim to have pulled back heavy weapons from the front lines in line with the truce. Meanwhile, a meeting of foreign ministers from Russia, Ukraine, Germany, and France in Paris ended without significant progress on Tuesday. Ukraine's foreign minister said while agreement was reached on some technical aspects, they remain divided over who was at fault for the sporadic fighting in eastern Ukraine. Pressure is mounting on Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu from President Barack Obama's aides ahead of Netanyahu's address before the U.S. Congress on next Wednesday. In a television interview, National Security Advisor Susan Rice said the Israeli leader's high-profile visit was destructive to the fabric of the two countries' relationship, which was followed by sharp words Wednesday by Secretary of State John Kerry, who said Netanyahu may be exercising incorrect judgment. Netanyahu is to address Congress on March 3rd on the ongoing Iranian nuclear negotiations ahead of his re-election back at home.
And a good Thursday morning to you all as we kick things off with the 2015 National Winter Sports Festival, which officially kicked off on Wednesday. But of course, with the figure skating competition beginning a day earlier, it was Park So-yeon who rallied back on Wednesday to beat her longtime rival Kim Hae-jin in the latest single competition. Now, with the two 17-year-olds competing in the high school group, Park So-yeon bounces back from a disappointing short program to score a 106.78 in the free skating program to rally back to win with an overall score of 156.68 points. Now, despite having the lead after the first day, Kim Hae-jin would struggle a bit on the second day, but would finish in second place with a final score of 144.80. Now, many experts are calling this season in the LPGA the season of the rookies, with a number of super rookies joining the tour. And starting today, another one of those super rookies will make her season debut. With the 2015 Honda LPGA Thailand kicking off today, the 20-year-old Kim Hyo Jung makes her highly anticipated season debut in the tour, adding to the list of top rookies already in the LPGA. Now, Kim, who's already made a name for herself in the LPGA last year with a huge win during the 2014 Arirang Championship, hopes to join Kim Se-young as the second rookie to win a title this season. Now, Korean national football team head coach Uli Stielike has been the talk of the nation thanks to his recent success during the 2015 Asian Cup in Australia. But apparently, he was recently sought after by another nation despite the fact that, well, he's coaching Korea. Now, according to reports coming out on Wednesday, the Egyptian Football Association had Uli Stielike as one of the finalists in the request to find a new head coach and actually asked him if he'd be interested, despite the fact that he had just signed a contract with Korea. But the 61-year-old simply stated that he loves Korea and plans to stay. Now, though details on the offer remain a mystery, many say that the contract offered to him would have been higher than what he initially signed with the KFA. Now, only if former Kia Tigers ace Yoon Seungmin was as highly sought after as Uli Stielike, right? Because after being denied an invite to the Baltimore Orioles spring camp, he's been training on his own after initially refusing to join the minor league camp. Well, that's all going to change now. Now, with this minor league team assuming he's not interested in joining their camp, he was left off their roster as well, until Yoon Seungmin decided last minute that he will join their camp come March 7th. And with the minor league camp members being allowed to play during the spring training exhibition games with the Orioles, this just might be his very last shot at making the team. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Good morning. It rained in the upper parts overnight and the roads are wet, so drive with extra caution this morning. And no rain is in store for today and the air got much cleaner, but it won't be as mild as yesterday, though the lows are kicking off slightly higher as the current reading is at about 2.5 degrees in Seoul. But unlike early spring temperatures we had with a high of 12.5 degrees yesterday here in Seoul, it will feel much chillier today. Daytime highs will be 8 to 9 degrees lower, only peaking at 4 this afternoon, so be sure to dress warmly. In the meantime, though, most of the southern provinces will still have mild temperatures, so let's take a closer look at the readings for today. Now, the top temperatures in Daegu and Busan will be very pleasant, peaking to 11 and 14, and Gwangju tops out at 8. And as for the other regions, Jeju Island and Daejeon should see a high of 9 and 6, and Dokdo peaks at 8. But that's all for Korea, and here's the international weather for viewers around the world.
that's going to do it for now. Korea Today is coming up at the top of the hour. Have a great day. Goodbye.